Because if you've ever been obsessed over anyone or anything, longing for someone, longing for a soulmate, longing for someone to complete you, felt consumed by someone, even when you knew deep down they were not healthy for you, you are not weak. You are most likely caught in a nervous system pattern that I call the fantasy loop. Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. Recovery doesn't end when the chaos stops. That's when the real work begins. After 16 years of recovery, my novels, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, and my new book, Becoming My Own Effing Soulmate, tell the before and after. The addiction, the healing, and the messy realities of learning how to choose yourself. Both are available now on Amazon. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gantt. Today I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves or others. You know those deep, dark secrets you probably want to take to your grave, or those lighter, funnier secrets that are just plain embarrassing. Join me each week as we take a deep dive into one subject matter, exploring the how, what, when, where, and why of each other. This is Secret Life, and I'm excited for you to join the ride. Today, we are talking about, dun dun dun, the fantasy loop. Yes, the fantasy loop, the loop you go into when you live in fantasy. I have been working on this for such a long time. All the years of work, I've been doing all the training, all the clients, and myself, my own recovery about the fantasy loop and how to help people see the fantasy loop when they're in it and heal from the fantasy loop. So this is a cycle that keeps us addicted to unavailable love. People, things, all of that glorious stuff. But before we begin, I need to say this and I need to be clear. This episode is not about judging you, judging me, or judging anybody in the fantasy loop. It's not about shaming you. It's definitely not about calling yourself crazy that you're in obsession or in fantasy about something or someone. Because if you've ever been obsessed over anyone or anything, longing for someone, longing for a soulmate, longing for someone to complete you, felt consumed by someone, even when you knew deep down they were not healthy for you, you are not weak. You are most likely caught in a nervous system pattern that I call the fantasy loop. And today I'm going to break it down. Why it happens, why it feels so addictive, why healthy love can actually feel uncomfortable, and how we begin to break free from this fantasy attachment. Because what I've learned after the 16 years of recovery and work on myself with my clients, most people are not addicted to another person. They are addicted to the fantasy attached to them. That is the massive difference. So here we go. Here is stage one of the fantasy loop. Emotional emptiness. The loop usually does not begin with somebody, with a person. It begins with emotional emptiness. And this can look like loneliness, disconnection, low self-esteem, attachment wounds, unmet emotional needs, nervous system dysregulation. There's usually some inner void already there before a person arrives. And this is important because most people think I became obsessed because they were special. No. Believe me, I used to be like, oh, I'm obsessed with this person. And then I would finally see them out of the fantasy. I'm like, ooh. So it's not about them and them being special. The obsession became possible because there was emotional vulnerability underneath. So I had a client, let's just call her Melissa, right? I'll give her a name. Melissa was incredibly successful. She's beautiful. She's smart. She's high achieving, but emotionally, she felt invisible most of her life. Her father was emotionally unavailable. Her mother was overwhelmed, and she grew up constantly trying to earn love by performing. So underneath her success was this deep feeling of I'm not enough. And that emptiness became the doorway to her fantasy loop. Okay, so then we go to stage two, Activation. Then comes the activation. This is when an unavailable person or an inconsistent person appears, and suddenly your nervous system goes bing, lights up. It's like a light, bing, because they are emotionally distant, avoidant, charming, inconsistent, mysterious, unavailable, hot, cold. But sometimes, and something about them creates this chemistry, passion, this intensity. And what we think is chemistry is actually not. And then we had a client, right? We'll name that person David, who became obsessed with this woman at work. And that's what was fascinating, is that they barely even knew each other when they talked every day. They barely knew each other deeply. It was mostly just work co-workers. But every time she gave him attention, his nervous system was like exploded. And he said, I just feel so alive around her. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's activation. You're getting high. She's getting you high. That person is just becoming an emotional symbol, not who they are, because you don't actually know who they are, but because of what they awakened inside of you. And this is where people confuse activation for love. So there, we're going next. Stage 3, fantasy projection, my favorite. This is the stage that I just loved, because you get to project everything you want on this other person. And I'll explain it. This is where people have a lot of trouble, because this is where their mind fills in all the little gaps. The story starts to develop. You don't actually see the real person anymore at all. You see potential, image of a future together, emotional rescue, validation, fantasy of finally being chosen, and you project qualities onto them that don't exist. Then another client of mine, we'll just name Suzanne. She built her entire future in her mind with a man she barely knew. She imagined vacations, emotional intimacy, marriage, safety, kids, healing. In her mind, he was the one. But in reality, she barely knew him. That's the power of fantasy projection. The brain becomes attached to the possibility instead of the reality of the person. And honestly, this is why unavailable people become so attractive and addictive. Because when someone is fully available, grounded, consistent, there's less room for fantasy. Fantasy only thrives in uncertainty. And listen, I used to go through this because I would be with someone and I literally could put a bag over their head. It's just what they mirrored back to me, because everything was in my mind. So when I finally removed the bag and fully saw them, they weren't a fantasy. They were a real person. And that clarity, my fantasy did not like it. So then we'll go to stage 4, the on and off reinforcement. This is where the addiction to the person deepens. The meaning, they give you just enough. They text back a compliment, a deep conversation, a moment of intimacy. And then all of a sudden, poof, they disappear emotionally. They disappear physically for a while. It doesn't matter. They disappear. Hot, cold, close, distant, available, withdrawn. It's that toxicity that creates the dopamine spike in your brain. And that dopamine is not driven by stability. It's driven by anticipation, getting the next hit from them. This is why toxic attachments can feel chemically addictive. So I have another client, let's name him. I like to give him names now. Mark, not my husband. He used to say, like, I lived for crumbs, breadcrumbs. And that sentence truly broke my heart because he was such a great person. But that's exactly what the loop does. It teaches people to survive on tiny little moments of validation. And the less available the person became, the harder he chased, because the nervous system started associating longing for love. And it was a big moment for him when he finally stopped that loop and stopped looking at the chase as love. All right, let's do stage 5. Obsession and self-abandonment. We have all been there. We've abandoned ourselves for unavailable people, but this is a big part of the spiral. You start obsessing and self-abandoning. And this is where overthinking begins, replaying conversations, checking your phone constantly, analyzing texts, fantasizing constantly, losing your boundaries, neglecting yourself. Your world starts to shrink around the fantasy. I had another client, her name will be Ashley, who stopped focusing on work. She was a big executive. She stopped focusing on work and she became consumed with her coworker in limerence. And she started turning down opportunities, not going on the sales trip, stopped seeing friends. She couldn't sleep. Her entire emotional world revolved around, what does he think of me? That's fucking self-abandonment. And I want people to listen when I say this. The fantasy loop is not just about chasing someone. It's about abandoning yourself in the process. Here's stage 6, collapse and withdrawal. Ooh, brutal. I hated the collapse and withdrawal. Eventually, reality comes back. Maybe they pull away more. Maybe they completely ghost you. Maybe they reject you, choose someone else, or the fantasy just finally cracks and you see the real person. What follows feels devastating because it's not just heartbreak, it's withdrawal. I had a client in Florida. We'll just call him Ryan. His breakup feels like he was detoxing, he said. He said it was harder to go through. He had a drug addiction, go through that drug addiction. It was harder for him to detox from her. And honestly, he was detoxing from her. It's no different than a drug addiction because toxic attachment activates the same reward system involved in a chemical addiction. So when the fantasy collapses, people really experience panic, grief, shame, emptiness, emotional withdrawal, nervous system just crashes. This is why people often go back when they know it's hurting them because the nervous system wants relief. So then we start the fantasy loop all over again to reattachment to fantasy. So that is the 7th stage. You reattach because instead of healing the wound underneath that loop, the brain searches for another high, another unavailable person, another fantasy, another obsession, and the cycle starts all over again. And I had a client, she was amazing. We'll just call her Nicole. She was in New York and she's dated like 5 different people, but emotionally it felt like she was dating the same person over and over again. She said that it could be the same person. And that is the loop. It's like a different face, but the same nervous system pattern. So how do you break the loop? First, awareness. You got to be aware when you are going into the pattern. You cannot heal a pattern if you cannot see it. So that's number 1. Number 2, you regulate your nervous system because this is deeper than just mindset. This is body-based attachment conditioning. 3, you heal that freaking attachment wound. Whatever you are, anxious, attached, or fearful, avoidant, dismissive, avoidant, it's not just the relationship, it's the wound underneath the relationship that comes out. 4, you rebuild your self-worth and boundaries. This is a big one. This is how I help a lot of people get out of the fantasy loop is we rebuild on the inside out. Healthy love requires self-connection. So you need to be a full person to connect. So you focus back on you and having boundaries in your life. And finally, you choose reality over fantasy. This part is really hard because healthy love can be initially very unfamiliar, sometimes boring, a lot boring. Not because it is boring, it's because your nervous system has been trained to associate anxiety with connection. But real love is not that. It is not obsession. It's not chaos. It is not confusion. It's not emotional starvation. Real love is safe, consistent, present, mutual, emotionally honest. And I think that's one of the most important things people can learn from this is that if you're listening and you realize, oh my God, I've been living in this fantasy loop in something in my life, I just want you to know something. I have been in your shoes. I have gotten through the fantasy loop. This is brutal. Most people live in fantasy, even with social media. Everything, our whole world seems to be escaping into fantasy. You are not broken. This is not a character flaw. This is a survival pattern. And survival patterns can be healed. I am living proof because the goal is not to stop loving or even having imagination or anything like that. The goal is stop to abandoning yourself for the love that was never truly real to begin with. So I just need you to understand the cycle that keeps us addicted to unavailable love. There is a healing out of that, and that is getting out of the fantasy loop. Thank you for listening to Secret Life Podcast. I hope you learned a lot, and awareness is the key to breaking the loop. Send me your thoughts and feelings to secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the show. Please subscribe, rate, share, or send me a note at secretlifepodcast.com. And if you'd like to check out my book, head over to secretlifenovel.com or Amazon to pick up a copy for yourself or someone you love. Thanks again. See you soon.